Private members' business, item number 1149, standing in the name of Mr. Latham, relating to Vishva Hindu patient.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that private members' business standing in my name, item 1149, be considered in short form format.
The question is a motion of the member. All those in favour say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
And I move 1149 standing in my name, Mr. President. And I can report to the House a world first, a unique global circumstance, whereas their source of information, the Greens, are relying on the CIA. Who would have thought that in smearing a peace-loving religious organisation teaching scripture in our schools, that the source of information relied upon by Mr. Shoebridge is the CIA?
The CIA set him up.
Well, we'd love to see his file at the CIA, but apparently he's got some information there. And the matter of this resolution was perfectly expressed by the member opposite, the Honourable Daniel Mookie, who said in this place not long ago, there is no evidence that the VHP in Australia is anything other than a voluntary organisation of men and women who teach Hindu children about their religion. So says the New South Wales Police Force, so says the Department of Education. The allegations that were made at budget estimates have hurt many people in the Hindu community, and from a Labor Party's perspective, the Honourable Member was urging the member, that's Mr. Shoebridge, who made these allegations, to reconsider such remarks. That the budget estimates, we're there to hold the government accountable. The budget estimates are not there to slur a peace-loving community with false allegations. Well, it is. It's very true. And it's good to see the Labor Party rejecting CIA-sourced information and doing their own original research to ensure that the facts are known in the Legislative Council of New South Wales and the broader New South Wales community. So I commend the Honourable Member for that. And it's hard to believe the Greens are in the lap. The Greens are in the stranglehold of the CIA in projecting this information against one of the very fine community groups. Now, I chaired one of these budget estimates, Deputy President, and there was a second one at the multicultural budget estimates where the same slur was put out by the CIA-loving Mr. Shoebridge. And at the Education Committee, the outgoing Secretary of the Department, Mr. Scott, who's moved on to Wrecking Sydney University, said this of the allegation against the VHP. Okay. On the specifics of the two schools you raised today, I'm informed that in Toongabbie Public School there's usually a teacher with a Hindi background in the rooms, Hindi background, while each stage of the group SRE is conducted. The groups are held in different times so the teacher can attend. At William Dean there's also a teacher present at all times where the SRE takes place. So this is a comprehensive safeguard. It's a problem, and the feeling is from the police and the education department there is no problem. VHP Australia has 155 teachers who volunteer their time every week to teach children about their faith. These teachers are contributing to Australian society and to the schools in which they teach. 2 months on, they're still very disappointed with Mr. Shoebridge's baseless and hurtful allegations. It's one thing for the member to be in collaboration with the CIA. That's very unusual indeed, but at least in the Australian circumstance, he should have checked with the police here, the Department of Multicultural Affairs and the Education Department would have found out that he'd been misled by the CIA. Strange days indeed for the Greens. The motion calls on Mr. Shoebridge to retract the statements that he made and apologise to VHP Australia and the Hindu community for the hurt that's been caused, and of course a hurt at a time when that community is very worried about the situation in India. I think it was perfectly summed up by the Honourable Daniel Mookie, who said that budget estimates are there to elicit information from government, to keep government accountable, but in making this kind of false allegation, maybe the honourable members made an honest mistake. Maybe the CIA gave him misleading information, but in the Australian circumstance, he should have the integrity to withdraw, to apologise and ease the hurt on this community. From what we can see, there's no evidence that this slur is accurate, and ease the hurt on this community which is already suffering in the circumstance of COVID in India.
Are there any other members seeking the call? I call the Honourable Scott Farlow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. Like the Honourable Mark Latham, I was too at one of those budget estimates hearings where I heard the outrageous slurs that were raised by the Honourable Mr David Shoebridge in the debate. Of course, as we know, that Vishwa Hindu Parishad are a registered incorporated charity in New South Wales with no paid staff but over 250 volunteers who dedicate themselves to supporting the community and particular special religious education in our state, which we know, of course, is a bugbear of Mr Shoebridge's. Vishwa Hindu Parishad aims to promote activities of culture, community arts, community languages, heritage, civilisation, education, aid and relief. Of course, they are operating in schools throughout New South Wales, and we have now over 187,000 Hindus in New South Wales, of which 34% are under the age of 14. And of course, one of the key tenets, one of the key phrases of Hinduism, and I'm sure the Honourable Daniel Mookhey will be talking about this, is Vadasaiva Katabankam, which I'm sure I've pronounced incorrectly, but the world is one family. And we did not see that, of course, on display. But when we look at the program of VHP, their SRE program, Teaching Hindu Dharma, is fully approved by the New South Wales Department of Education. And Vishwa Hindu Parishad advise that they currently service around 80 schools. All of the teachers are fully trained volunteers who are mostly the parents of studying children and all undergo mandatory working with children checks and regular ongoing annual training. And as we heard from the Department of Education as well, that there are teachers who are placed in classrooms. Mr Shoebridge, on 2 occasions, of course, in budget estimates, made shocking claims about the organisation that carried the implication that they were an extremist religious organisation. And what was this based on? Of course, the Honourable Mark Latham was talking about the CIA, but it was an old edition of the political pressure groups in the CIA World Factbook on India. But guess what was also listed in that same edition of the CIA World Factbook under Australian political pressure groups, the same category, but trade unions and environmental groups. So VHP is not listed in the current edition of the CIA World Factbook, and Mr Shoebridge has not put forward any allegations or evidence of any illegal actions, extremist positions or issues with them. This is just pure divisive politics. If only Mr Shoebridge would take as hard a line against illegal and unethical actions, such as damaging historical statues, supporting and encouraging those who assault police, those who steal workers' rights, and supporting convicted criminal Marxists, anarchists and Antifa members, all actions that are undertaken by Australian political pressure groups listed in the document that he quoted from in estimates. The New South Wales Department of Education have worked with VHP as an approved partner since October of 1998 and confirmed that they consider the group to be a long-standing and upstanding partner, fully recognising the contribution of their volunteers in SRE. Further to this, the New South Wales Police have confirmed that they are not a terrorist organisation and they have no concerns about the group. The right thing for the Honourable David Shoebridge to do is stand up in this House and say sorry.
Are there any other members seeking the call? Mr David Shoebridge, order. Order.
Thanks, Madam Deputy President. The Greens oppose this motion. My office has had repeated concerns raised with it from across the Indian diaspora about the rise of right-wing extremism in the community directly connected to extremist nationalist political movements in India. One of those organisations from India is Vishwa Hindu Parishad. So extreme are those concerns that the VHP was recognised as a military extremist religious organisation in the 2018 CIA Fact Book. There is a reason for this. It's because of the divisive political positions adopted by that organisation as well as its far-right history. I will not repeat the appallingly sectarian statements made by MS Golwalkar, one of the VHP's founders, in publications such as Our Nationhood Defined in 1939 and Bunch of Thoughts in 1966. It's sufficient to note that they extolled racial theories and promoted Islamophobia. Given this, I look forward to Vishwa Hindu Parishad Australia openly disavowing itself from this history and those statements, and including the extremist positions adopted by the VHP in India at the moment. This is a step of good faith that is much needed. The threat of far-right extremist groups in our society is real, and concerns about it must not be shut down by motions like this. I note as well the recent arrest and charging by New South Wales Police of a suspect in relation to attack on young Sikh Australians in Harris Park. and the concerns that that violence was related to extremist, nationalist and sectarian politics. These concerns are real. The Greens have always supported and will always support the values of tolerance and acceptance that underpin multicultural Australia. These principles have been directly challenged by the Coalition in recent weeks by the offensive and targeted travel ban on India ordered by the Morrison government. And just this morning, the Coalition in this chamber rejected a motion calling for solidarity with India and support for the Indian people during the COVID-19 crisis that is sweeping the country. In opposing that motion, they also refused to support the calls from across the Indian diaspora for the immediate end to the travel ban. The hollowness of this motion, in light of the appalling response by these same politicians to the human tragedy that is engulfing India, is obvious to all. It is not without irony that this motion is presented by Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party, given the appalling and repeated attacks that party has made on multiculturalism, immigration and minorities over the years. I say to any part of multicultural Australia that if you are looking to support from Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party, you are looking in the wrong place. Finally, I note that the Greens have a long-standing concerns about the lack of oversight of special religious education in Australia. It's delivered without any supervision or scrutiny by the Department of Education. These concerns cover all special religious education in public schools. However, while ever SRE is available, we also firmly believe that it must be open to all faiths and all religions equally and without discrimination.
The member's time has expired. I call the Honourable Daniel Morkey.
Thank you, Madam President. And look, I don't have any divine authority, but I can't but help notice that Hinduism has some new friends tonight. And I assure them that we will consider their contribution as we decide their next lives in due time. And appreciate their contribution, therefore. I spoke on this issue last week. I spoke on this issue at a time when the entire Australian diaspora is just going through a crisis, regardless. And I spoke at that time well before the issue was politicised, because at a time of crisis, when so many people are turning to their faith organisations should not come under attack unless it's based on fact. But since then, it's not like the circumstance in India has gotten any better. And as this has been narrated to Australians in major media publications, just this week, we had one major media publication depict a picture of Ganesh, one of the most important Hindu deities, being smashed with a hammer as a way in which to send a signal about what's going on in India. Now, I don't necessarily ascribe any particular motive to that particular decision, but that decision also has caused great offence this week to lots of people, including the Hindu Council of Australia. Labor is not interested in joining a culture war. Labor is not interested in engaging in a tit-for-tat struggle, especially when there are so many people, including my own family members, who are battling incredibly right now in India. We are far more interested in expressing solidarity with the people of India, which is what I said last week. We are just as equally clear that we should be expressing solidarity with those faith organisations that are helping. I did not think that the member who made the questions in Motion Estimates did so on the basis of that. After he made those questions, I met with the Vishwa Hindu Parishad. I met with their teachers. I met with the Hindu Council. I've met with now, I think, 5 groups about these particular remarks. I've spoken to at least 2 different temples on these particular remarks. It's undoubtedly the case that caused offence. It's undoubtedly the case that the member needs to reflect on that. And if he's going to, any member is wishing to use any forum to make allegations, do so on the basis of fact. But equally, it is just as wrong for any member of any side of the political party to just come before this House with a view that we would just politicise this for no reason. Now, I said last week, and I appreciate with some eloquence Mr. Latham repeated my comments. I have to find I thought they were relevant, particularly as I hear them again. But there was another thing I did say. The fact that there is religious education for Hindu children in New South Wales schools is an immense achievement of the Hindu community. When I went through schooling, that wasn't available. I spent countless hours in non-scripture because it wasn't possible for me to access this schooling. And I have to say, I went to school in the same area as the 2 schools that are subject to this debate. I know these schools well. It is an immense achievement of every Hindu religious teacher who is providing education, the volunteers. They are like my mum's aunties. And in our culture, that means a lot. I know these people. They are not extremists. It's not right to deem them with that brush. Members need to reflect on that, but not just the member who made the comments, equally the members who are seeking to politicise it in a time of crisis.
Are there any other members seeking the call? I'll call the mover in reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. Can I just say there's no attempt here to politicise the matter or involve it in some culture war. It's a simple matter of fact and correcting the record, as the substance of the honourable member's comments indicated. And I've moved this motion for the simple reason I chaired the PC3 Education Committee meeting where the most serious slur was made against these teachers at William Dean and Toongabbie schools. Now, we know Mr Shoebridge has a hatred of SRE, and he seems to roll that into false information about the VHP to the point where, quite remarkably, if you listen to his comments this evening, he is trying to link this organisation, which has received a truthful, honourable set of references here from Daniel Mookie, to an attack on a Sikh person in Harris Park, without any evidence that they were involved whatsoever. The VHP's got any responsibility for what happened to that Sikh person in Harris Park. So not content with slurring these teachers because of his pathological hatred, his totally irrational hatred of SRE, he's extended the slur this evening to say somehow they've got an involvement in an attack in Harris Park. There's no evidence of this whatsoever. This is a Member of Parliament engaging in fantasy land. Complete and absolute fantasy land.
Order. A point of order has been taken.
I'm going to take
Order.
I accept the position put by the Honourable Daniel Mookie in this debate, and I accept in good faith his views about the teachers at the
Your point of order.
But I accept it in good faith. But I reject, and the member is seeking to.
You need a point of order, Mr.
Member is seeking
Shoebridge.
to deliberately mislead the House. That was never my statement.
No, that's a debating
Never
point.
my statement making
Mr.
that
Shoebridge.
The concern was about
Mr.
right-wing
Shoebridge,
extremism.
you will resume your seat, Mr. Latham.
Thank you, Deputy President. The truth is, in public life, we all make errors. Okay? We do with a lot of information, you try and put a lot of material out there in the public arena. Everyone makes a mistake. It's not that hard to say, I got this wrong, I'm sorry. And to this community, where I'm impressed, incredibly impressed by the news of the great achievement of these schools, where this community, which works hard and makes a great contribution, the Hindu community, particularly in the small business sector, have got something they're proud of in our schools. It shouldn't be diminished in this way. It shouldn't be slurred in a manner that's completely beyond any factual information and record before the House. And I say to Mr Shoebridge, seriously, it's not that hard to say you've got this wrong and apologise to a community who very clearly deserve that apology in all the circumstances. Be a person of honour, be a man, step up and say you're sorry.
The Honourable Mark Latham has moved private members' business item number 1149. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The clerk will read the order of the day.
Sorry, I said no.
Private members' business item number 1141, standing in the name of Mr Borzak.